The morning sun cast long shadows across Westminster Abbey as Prince William stood before the ornate mirror in his private chamber. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the ceremonial uniform that would mark this historic day. Today was not just any day, it was the day he would officially become the Prince of Wales, a title that carried the weight of centuries and the memory of his beloved mother, Princess Diana. William's reflection stared back at him, but his mind wandered. Two memories of his childhood. He remembered being 7 years old, watching his mother get ready for royal events. Diana would always pause, look at herself in the mirror, and take a deep breath before facing the world. She had a special way of preparing herself, both mentally and emotionally, for the responsibilities that came with royal duty. The uniform he wore today was not chosen randomly. Every detail had been carefully planned to honor his mother's legacy while stepping confidently into his future role. The deep navy blue represented strength and stability, colors that Diana herself had favored during her most meaningful public appearances. The medals and decorations adorning his chest told stories of service, dedication, and the royal family's commitment to the British people. His wife, Catherine, entered the room quietly, understanding the magnitude of this moment. She had watched William struggle with the weight of expectation throughout their marriage, always supporting him while knowing that this day would eventually come. Catherine's presence brought him comfort, reminding him that he was not alone. In carrying this responsibility, the choice of accessories for today's ceremony had sparked tense discussion among royal advisors for months. William had insisted on wearing a particular pin that had belonged to his mother, a small but significant piece that most people would never notice, but that held enormous personal meaning for him. This pin had been Diana's favorite, something she wore during her most important charitable work and public engagements. As William made final adjustments to his appearance, he could hear the distant sounds of crowds gathering outside Westminster Abbey. Thousands of people had lined the streets since dawn, eager to witness this historic moment. The British public had watched him grow from a young boy grieving his mother's loss to a man ready to serve his country with the same compassion and dedication that Diana had shown. The weight of the moment was not lost on him. This coronation look was more than just ceremonial dress. It was a bridge between his past and future, visual representation of how his mother's influence would continue to guide his reign. Every thread, every metal, every carefully chosen element spoke to the deep emotional connection he maintained with Diana's memory while embracing his destiny as a future king. Palace staff moved quietly around him, making final preparations for the ceremony that would change his life forever. William closed his eyes briefly, feeling his mother's presence in the room. He knew that somewhere, somehow, Diana was watching over him with pride, knowing that her son was ready to carry forward the values she had instilled in him during their precious years together. The doors of Westminster Abbey opened with a ceremonial grandeur that had witnessed centuries of royal history. Prince William stepped forward, his footsteps echoing against the ancient stone floors that had supported kings and queens for over 1,000 years. The congregation rose as one, a sea of faces turning toward him with anticipation and respect. As William walked down the aisle, his eyes briefly met those of his father, King Charles, who sat in the front row, with tears already forming in his eyes. Charles had waited his entire life for this moment, not just as a king passing responsibility to his heir, but as a father watching his son embrace a destiny that had been shaped by both triumph and tragedy. The carefully chosen elements of William's appearance began to reveal their deeper significance to those who knew what to look for. Royal historians in the congregation immediately recognized the subtle references to Princess Diana woven throughout his ceremonial dress. The way his military decorations were arranged mirrored exactly how Diana had worn her own honors during her final public appearances, a detail that had been planned with meticulous care. Catherine walked behind him, her own appearance complementing the tribute that William was paying to his mother. She wore a tiara that had once belonged to Diana, borrowed from the royal collection specifically for this occasion. The choice had been William's suggestion, another way to ensure that his mother's presence was felt throughout this historic day. the Archbishop of Canterbury waited at the altar, holding the ceremonial items that would officially invest William with his new title. Behind the religious ceremony lay months of careful planning, with William's team ensuring that every aspect of today's events would honor both tradition and his mother's memory. The music selected for the ceremony included pieces that Diana had particularly loved, played by the same organist who had performed at her funeral years earlier. As William approached the altar, he caught sight of representatives from the various charities that Diana had supported during her lifetime. They had been given special seats in recognition of how William planned to continue his mother's charitable work in his new role. Many of them remembered Diana personally, and seeing William now, dressed in a way that so clearly honored her memory, brought tears to their eyes. The moment felt surreal to those watching from around the world. Television cameras captured every detail of William's appearance, and royal commentators began to notice the subtle tributes to Diana that had been woven throughout the ceremony. Social media exploded with observations about the pin, the color, choices, and the overall styling that clearly referenced his beloved mother. Young people in the congregation, many of whom had never known Diana personally, began to understand the deep emotional significance of what they were witnessing. William was not just accepting a title, he was publicly declaring his intention to carry forward his mother's legacy of compassion, service, and connection with ordinary people. The weight of history pressed down on the Abbey as William took his place at the altar. This was not just another royal ceremony, but a moment where past, present, future converged in a powerful tribute that would touch millions of hearts around the world. The ceremony reached its most emotional peak as the Archbishop of Canterbury began the formal investiture. Prince William knelt before the altar, his head bowed in reverence, as the ancient words that had been spoken for centuries filled the sacred space of Westminster Abbey. In this moment of profound silence, something extraordinary happened that no one had planned or expected. A shaft of sunlight broke through the stained glass windows, casting colored light directly onto the small pin that William wore Diana's pin. The light seemed to dance across the delicate piece of jewelry, creating an almost mystical effect that was captured by photographers and broadcast live to millions around the world. Those watching felt as though Diana herself was present, blessing her son's new role. William's emotion became visible for the first time during the ceremony. A single tear rolled down his cheek as he felt the weight of the moment, not just the responsibility of his new title, but the profound connection to his mother that this ceremony represented. The cameras caught this moment of vulnerability, and it immediately became one of the most powerful images of the entire event. Catherine, watching from her seat in the front row, placed her hand over her heart. She had been married to William long enough to understand the depth of his relationship with his mother's memory. Seeing him now, in this moment of triumph tinged with loss, reminded her of why she had fallen in love with a man who carried such grace under the weight of extraordinary circumstances. The congregation remained silent, but the emotional energy in the Abbey was palpable. Even hardened royal correspondents found themselves moved by the raw emotion they were witnessing. This was not the typical pomp and ceremony of royal events. This was a son honoring his mother while accepting the responsibility she had prepared him for through her love and example. As the formal words of investiture continued, William's mind drifted to specific memories of his mother. He remembered the day she had taken him and Harry to visit homeless shelters, teaching them that royalty meant service to others. He recalled her gentle hands comforting him during difficult moments in his childhood, and her fierce protection of both her sons against the pressures of royal life. The pin on his chest seemed to grow warmer as the ceremony progressed, though this was likely his imagination influenced by the emotional intensity of the moment. Many in the congregation later reported feeling an unusual sense of peace and presence during these crucial minutes, as though Diana's spirit was indeed watching over her eldest son. International dignitaries present at the ceremony recognized that they were witnessing something unprecedented in royal history. This was not just a formal transfer of titles and responsibilities. It was a public declaration of love that transcended death, a promise that Diana's values and vision would continue to guide the monarchy into the future. The moment stretched on, filled with significance that went far beyond the ceremonial words being spoken. William was not just becoming the Prince of Wales, he was accepting the mantle of his mother's legacy, while promising to carry it forward with the same compassion and dedication that had made Diana beloved around the world. As Prince William rose from his knees, officially invested as the Prince of Wales, the transformation was visible to everyone present. The weight of responsibility had settled upon his shoulders, but there was also a sense of peace and purpose that radiated from his bearing. The tribute to his mother had been more than symbolic, had been a source of strength that would guide him in the years ahead. The recessional began with William walking back down the aisle, but now everything was different. He was no longer just Prince William Hay, was the Prince of Wales, carrying a title that connected him directly to his mother's legacy. The congregation watched as he passed, many noticing how his posture had changed, how he carried himself with a new sense of dignity and purpose. Outside Westminster Abbey, the crowds had grown even larger. News of the emotional ceremony had spread quickly through social media and television coverage. With millions of people around the world moved by the powerful tribute they had witnessed, when William emerged from the Abbey, the cheers were deafening. But there was also a quality of reverence in the crowd's response that acknowledged the deeper significance of what had just occurred. The balcony appearance at Buckingham Palace later that day became one of the most memorable moments in recent royal history. William stood beside Catherine and their children, wearing the same carefully chosen outfit that had honored his mother throughout the day. When he waved to the crowd below, photographers captured images that would grace front pages around the world. A future king would found a way to honor his past while embracing his destiny. Royal experts and commentators struggled to find adequate words to describe what they had witnessed. The ceremony had been flawlessly executed from a technical standpoint, but the emotional resonance had elevated it to something approaching the sacred. Many compared it to the most moving moments of Diana's own public life, noting how William had found a way to channel her spirit without overshadowing his own important moment. The international reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Messages of congratulations poured in from world leaders, but they were accompanied by acknowledgments of the beautiful way William had honored his mother's memory. The ceremony had reminded the world why Diana had been so beloved, while also introducing them to a prince who was ready to serve with the same grace and compassion. Social media platforms were flooded with images and videos from the ceremony, particularly focusing on the moments when William's emotion had been most visible. The hashtag honoring both William and Diana began trending worldwide within hours, with people sharing their own memories of the people's princess and expressing hope for William's future reign. Behind the scenes at Buckingham Palace, the royal family gathered for a private celebration that was both joyous and deeply emotional. King Charles embraced his son, whispering words of pride and encouragement that only the two of them would ever know. Catherine stood nearby, holding their children close, understanding that this day had changed not just William's role, but their entire family's future. The day had exceeded everyone's expectations in terms of its emotional impact and global reach. What had been planned as a formal ceremony had become something much more powerful, a moment of healing that connected the royal family's tragic past with a hopeful future. All channeled through a son's love for his mother and his commitment to continuing her work. In the days following the coronation ceremony, the impact of Prince William's powerful tribute continued to ripple across the globe. News outlets from every continent carried stories about the emotional ceremony, focusing particularly on how William had managed to honor his mother's memory while stepping confidently into his new role. The images of him wearing Diana's pin, with that shaft of sunlight illuminating it at the crucial moment, became iconic symbols of continuity and hope. Letters and messages began pouring into Buckingham Palace from ordinary people who had been moved by what they witnessed. Many wrote about their own experiences of loss and how William's public display of love for his mother had helped them process their own grief. Parents wrote about explaining Diana's legacy to their children, using William's example to show how love and memory can provide strength even in the most challenging circumstances. The charities that Diana supported during her lifetime reported an unprecedented surge in donations and volunteer applications. People who had been inspired by William's tribute wanted to continue the work that had meant so much to the people's princess. Food banks, homeless shelters, AIDS research organizations all benefited from this wave of generosity sparked by a son's love for his mother. International fashion, magazines, and style experts analyzed every aspect of William's coronation appearance. But their focus went far beyond mere aesthetics. Fashion historians noted how the careful selection of colors, accessories, and styling had created a visual narrative about grief, love, and continuity that transcended traditional royal ceremony. The pin that had belonged to Diana became a symbol of how personal items can carry profound, emotional weight across generations. Television networks around the world produced documentaries about the ceremony, interviewing royal experts, historians, and people who had known Diana personally. These programs explored how William had found a way to make his mother's presence felt without allowing grief to overshadow celebration. Many commented on the maturity and emotional intelligence required to balance such competing demands on such a public stage. The younger generation, particularly those who had never experienced Diana's impact firsthand, began researching her life and work. Libraries reported increased requests for books about the Princess of Wales. Online searches about her charitable work reached levels not seen since the anniversary of her death. William's tribute had introduced a new generation to his mother's legacy in a way that felt immediate and relevant. Royal protocol experts noted how William had managed to honor tradition while also creating something entirely new. The ceremony had followed centuries-old precedent in its formal structure, but the emotional content had been revolutionary in its openness and vulnerability. This balance between tradition and innovation suggested how William might approach his future reign. Behind the scenes, royal staff reported that William seemed transformed by the experience. Colleagues noted a new sense of purpose and confidence in his approach to his duties. The successful tribute to his mother had not only honored her memory, but it also provided him with a foundation of strength for the challenges ahead. He had proven to himself and the world that he could carry Diana's legacy forward while remaining true to his own vision of service. The global media coverage continued for weeks, with each new analysis revealing additional layers of meaning in what had initially appeared to be simply a beautiful and moving ceremony. William's coronation had become a masterclass in how public figures can navigate personal loss while fulfilling public responsibilities, creating a template that would be studied and admired for generations to come. Months after the coronation ceremony, the lasting impact of Prince William's tribute to his mother continued to shape his reign as Prince of Wales. The emotional connection he had forged with the public through his display of vulnerability and love had fundamentally changed how people viewed the monarchy. Opinion polls showed unprecedented levels of support for William personally, with many citing his coronation tribute as the moment they truly understood his character and values. The pin that had belonged to Princess Diana became one of the most recognizable symbols in the world, reproduced on everything from commemorative coins to charitable fundraising materials. However, William was careful to ensure that his mother's memory was honored appropriately, working with Diana's estate to create official replicas that could be sold to raise money for the causes she had supported. This decision demonstrated his understanding that his mother's legacy belonged not just to him, but to everyone whose lives she had touched. William's first official acts as Prince of Wales directly reflected the values his mother had instilled in him. His inaugural speech outlined a vision for royal service that emphasized mental health awareness, environmental protection, and support for society's most vulnerable members. The speech was delivered while wearing the same outfit from his coronation, creating a visual link between his promises and his mother's memory that resonated powerfully with audiences. Worldwide, the success of the coronation tribute had given William confidence to be more open about his emotional life and his ongoing relationship with his mother's memory. In interviews and public appearances, he began speaking more freely about how Diana's influence continued to guide his decisions. This openness was revolutionary for the traditionally reserved royal family, but it connected William with a generation that valued authenticity and emotional honesty. Catherine's role in supporting William's tribute had not gone unnoticed. She found herself increasingly admired for her grace in helping her husband honor his first love, his love for his mother, the way she had participated in the ceremony. Wearing Diana's tiara and supporting William's emotional journey had shown the public a partnership built on mutual respect and understanding. Their marriage had become a symbol of how love can grow stronger when it honors rather than competes with meaningful memories. The international diplomatic impact of the coronation was significant as well. World leaders who had attended the ceremony spoke privately about how moved they had been by William's tribute, and many noted that it had changed their perception of the British monarchy. The ceremony had demonstrated that the royal family was capable of evolution and emotional growth, making them more relevant partners in addressing global challenges. Educational institutions around the world began incorporating the coronation into their curricula as an example of effective leadership communication. Business schools analyzed how William had used personal storytelling to connect with diverse audiences, while psychology programs examined the ceremony as a case study in healthy grief processing. The coronation had become more than a royal event, had become a teaching moment about love, loss, and resilience. As William settled into his new role, he often reflected on that moment during the ceremony when the sunlight had illuminated his mother's pin. Whether coincidence or something more meaningful, that moment had crystallized his understanding of his purpose. He was not just carrying on royal traditions, he was carrying forward his mother's revolutionary approach to royal service, adapted for a new generation and new challenges. The coronation had achieved something that royal advisors had hoped for but hardly dared expect. It had created a bridge between the monarchy's sometimes troubled past and a future filled with possibility. Through one son's love for his mother, the institution of royalty had been renewed and refreshed, ready to serve the British people and the world with compassion, authenticity, and hope. The tribute that had touched millions had also transformed the man who had offered it, preparing him for a reign that would honor both tradition and the revolutionary spirit of the people's princess.